Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Bay Tales Live number 8. I'm Vic Watson, and joining us here is Simon Bewick.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. So you're going to tell us about the format of the evening, Simon?
Okay, so format's the same as usual. Well, slightly different, actually. This is going to be our last show by taking a short summer break, both jetting off somewhere exotic, I'm sure. Is that right? No. So, slight change. But we're starting off as usual with myself and Vic talking about 3 books that we've read recently. Then we've got our guest reviewer, James Routledge from the Bound and Forum Books, who's going to be giving us a slightly longer review of a book that he's read recently. And tonight, as it's the last show before we take the break, we have not one, but 2 guest author readers, Joanne Harris and Steve Kavanagh. And I'm not doing the woos. I'll leave that. Vic has that trademarked.
Woo!
Yeah.
We also have, and this is an absolute steal by Simon, music from Doug Johnston. Yes, the Doug Johnston, writer, musician, all-round top bloke. Tonight, our main event is the lovely Olivia Kiernan chatting with the equally lovely James DeLargy about series and standalones and all things crime fiction. If you have a question for either of our guests, pop it in the chat tonight, please, because our Q&A has disappeared. We don't know where it's gone. Maybe it's off on its summer holidays. I don't know. If you'd like to chat about us on social media tonight, please use the hashtag BayTalesLive.
Excellent. So I mentioned Doug's music. You can hear that. I have to tell you, I've had an earworm for the last 3 days, putting the presentation for the break together and listening to Doug's music. It is very, very infectious. You'll love it. So you can hear that in the break. As it's worth staying and watching the break, not just for the music, but also because that's where you can see how to apply to win some of the titles that Vic and I are talking about. Now, we've changed the format slightly to stop the avalanche of emails. So what we'd like you to do is, when you hear us talking about a book, we'll try and give you an idea of which ones we have to give away free. So please just enter for the title that interests you most, okay? And the one other thing I'd say is make sure that you don't tune out early, because we've got some big news at the end of the show. So just as a reminder, we don't charge for our virtual events. Between running Virtual Noir at the Bar and Bay Tales, we've been going for over 1.5 years now. Zoom and all of the other platforms we use to bring you this free website featuring over 50 exclusive pieces of fiction and non-fiction from many of the authors you see, as well as 70 hours of recording. They don't get any cheaper. So if you can, please do think about donating to our Ko-fi account. You can see the details during the break as well, or you can see them on the website, www.baytales.com, during the slides of the break as well. So don't feel you have to, but it always helps us out. Vic, are you going to tell us what you've been reading?
Yeah, I've just put the Ko-fi link in the chat as well, just to be extra helpful. So this month I have read Such a Quiet Place by Megan Miranda. So the tagline is like, welcome to Hollow's Edge, a picture perfect neighborhood where everyone has each other's backs. At least that's how it used to be until the night Brandon and Fiona Truitt were found dead. Ruby Fletcher was convicted and branded a grifter, thief and sociopath 2 years ago by her friends and neighbours. Now freed by mistrial, Ruby is back at Hollow's Edge. But why is she back? No one wants her there, least of all her old housemate Harper Nash. As Ruby's return sends shockwaves through the community, the residents turn on each other, and it soon becomes clear that not everyone was honest about what happened to the Truitts that night. When Harper begins to receive threatening anonymous notes, she realises she has to uncover the truth before someone else gets hurt, someone like her. This is a really great read. It's dead easy going in terms of, it's just really easy to keep turning the page and wanting to hear what's going on, trying to work it out yourself. I thought Miranda's descriptions of Hollow's Edge and its surroundings were really vivid. It reminded me of Stepford, or maybe probably more like Wisteria Lane, actually. The idea of the perfect neighbourhood might not be original, but Megan Miranda has put a new spin on it. And I really like the way that she tells the story from Harper's point of view. and that's interspersed with copies of the private neighbourhood message board. So like if you've got a private Facebook group or a WhatsApp group, it's a really cool technique to show the readers the other viewpoints as well. Really believable characters, and I enjoyed trying to guess whether Ruby was really to blame for the Truett's deaths. On the face of it, Such a Quiet Place works well as a thriller, but it's also on a deeper level a study into human nature and how people cope in adverse situations and what they're willing to do to keep their secrets safe. My next choice this month is Running Out of Road by Kath Staincliffe, which I think was out earlier this month. Young Scarlett is dancing in the school talent show tomorrow. Nana, who Scarlett lives with since her mum died, reckons Scarlett will be on Strictly at this rate, except Scarlett doesn't make it home from school. She's abducted by a man she never imagined she'd see again, a man on the police's most wanted list, her dad. Ron is a house sitter and pet sitter since quitting his career in the fire service. He's currently holed up in a place deep in the Derbyshire Peaks, enjoying the solitude. Dylan's a cuckoo, dealing drugs on the county line, moving from nest to nest, picking out people who dare not say no. He keeps his head down, one step ahead of the law. But now everything's going to, I was going to swear there, going to hell in a handcar, let's say. DS Laura O'Neill is running on empty after nights dealing with her teething toddler. Sound familiar? But Laura is driving a hunt for Scarlett and knows that every minute counts. This is a typical Kath Staincliffe book. It is empathetic, it has 3D characters, it has excellent dialogue. Kath does this great high stakes that just continue to increase. It's fast paced, it's impossible to put down, and the setting is amazing. So the Derbyshire Peaks in a storm, it's just brilliant. It's so vivid that you could be there with the rain soaking into your collar. It's just so good. It is a police procedural, which generally speaking is not my favourite kind of crime, but it doesn't feel like a police procedural because at the heart of this story is all the different characters. Just 100% recommend. My next read is The Heights by Louise Candlish. I'm definitely getting better with pointing. It's only taken 18 months. The Heights is a tall, slender apartment building among the warehouses of Tower Bridge. Its roof terrace is so discreet you wouldn't know it existed if you weren't standing at the window of the flat directly opposite. But you are. And that's when you see a man up there, a man that you'd recognise anywhere. He's older now and his appearance has subtly changed, but it's definitely him. This makes no sense at all since you know he's been dead for 2 years. You know this for a fact because you killed him. Dun, dun, dun. So I have 8 days to read this book because Simon and I are very proud to announce that we are hosting Louise's book launch next Thursday night. It's free to attend. You can get the link on our Twitter pages and all of our other social and website and stuff. So register now to hear what we think of it and to see Louise chat with some very special guests on her publication day. Simon, what's your books this month?
I was just swiftly putting in the chat there. You can go to www.baytales.com/events and you can see that you can register there as well. So please feel free to do that. Okay, so I've got 3 books. The first is She's Mine by A.A. Chowdhury. Christine Donovan took a call she should have ignored while shopping. In those few seconds, her toddler Heidi was stolen. She's never been seen since, and Christine has never recovered from the loss and her own guilt about why she took the call and who from. Now, 20 years later, Christine receives a note. Heidi isn't dead. What follows is a twisty-turny tale from multiple perspectives. Christine's, her husband Greg's, her friends, Greg's mistress, and we jump back and forth learning more about what happened all those years ago and what the arrival of this message means for all involved, and some are more involved than others. The publishers, Hera Books, described the book as being an utterly gripping, dark and sinister psychological thriller with a shocking end twist. And Kishini Naidu, the publishing director, said that when the book arrived, she lost a day reading it from start to finish. So having read the book, I can see why. I got through it in 2 sittings. The promised twist in a book, I find, can be a bit of a double-edged sword. So many books promise, oh, you'll never see it coming. And for me, sometimes that's because it's so outlandish, or you just feel let down, or you're so busy looking for the twist, it almost spoils the story. So what I can say with this book, I'd figured out the twist within the first 40 pages. And I think I actually said that to you, didn't I, Vic? And yeah, then I realized I hadn't figured out the twist, and then I figured out the twist after the twist, but actually I hadn't, because Alex takes a sharp turn, and then another one, and then another one, but all in a logical, non-cheaty kind of way. So the book's already getting rave reviews from authors and readers alike. And as it says on the back of the book, if you're a fan of books like Blood Orange or Apple Tree Yard, then you'll find a whole lot to like in this book. So if you watch the break, you'll see you have a chance to win She's Mine. My second book choice is Half Past Tomorrow by Chris McGeorge. Now, growing up, I loved watching reruns of The Twilight Zone. And I'm saying reruns just so you know I'm not quite that old to have seen them the first time they were on. But the Twilight Zone, often twist in the tail stories cantering on a central idea of the mysterious, magical, or just the pure and simple unexplained. In his new novel, The Lord of the Locked Room Mystery, Chris McGeorge takes a little bit of that Twilight Zone take on the crime mystery novel. So Shirley Stedman is a 70-year-old widower living in the northeast of England. She helps out at the local hospital, volunteering on the hospital radio, filling her time in, even as she's still haunted by the death of her son. At the hospital radio station one night, Shirley hears a pirate radio station reporting the day's news. It's pretty minor stuff, a piece on keeping dogs off the park, a possible threat to the local leisure centre's existence, and a minor accident involving one of the local shop owners who's fallen off his ladder. It's an amateurish affair. They even got the date wrong on the news bulletin, announcing it was the news for the following day. But as the events described in the broadcast come true the following day, Shirley begins to realise she tuned into a very special radio station, a station who are reporting the news a day before it happens. A local shop owner falling off his ladder is one thing, but as things escalate, the reports become more gruesome, she realises that she's the only one who can stop the news coming true. If you like your crime and mystery with a touch of horror, science fiction, it's difficult to describe. So let's just say with a Twilight Zone feel to it, you can check out Chris's new book when it's released on August the 5th. And again, watch the break for your chance to win a signed copy of the book. Now, my final book choice is No Honor by Avais Khan. And there's absolutely nothing science fiction about this. It's a story that's all too real and could be plucked from the news we hear, albeit not enough, of honor killings in Pakistan. It's not an easy book to read. Often as crime readers, I think we take murder, if not lightly, then as plot point to move things along. This is not that story. In 16-year-old Abida's small rural Pakistani village, there are age-old rules to live by and family honor to protect. Avais gives us a clear introduction to this in the opening chapter on the murder of Shabnam, a young woman, a girl really, who has just given birth to a baby, conceived by an unwanted sexual encounter with a man visiting the village. It's a brutal, stark start to the book and sets up the very real fear and tension we feel for Abida, another girl from the same village, as she discovers she is pregnant. With the help of her father, she makes the escape to Lahore and disappears. When her father, Jamil, goes in search of her, we enter a different but no less dangerous world from which neither of them might escape. It's a challenging and brave book written from with an insider's point of view. Avais, for anyone who knows him on social media and real life, loves his country very much, but isn't blind to the issues around him. It's a book that can be brutal at times, touching on truly sensitive and emotional topics, but it's also a book about family, and as the back cover proclaims, the spirit of love in its many forms. It's a truly authentic view of the underbelly of Lahore's high society that could only be written by someone who has that insider's perspective. And I'm not saying that comes from the praise the novel has received from the likes of Hello Pakistan, Pakistan Today, and Khalij Times. All I can say is Avais writes a literary fiction, at times deceptively simple in prose, to represent the subject's appropriate point of view. At the same time, make no mistake, this is a novel that looks at crime in many different forms and presents them in an absolutely riveting manner. And again, we've got a copy of No Honor to give away. watch the break for more details on that. So you can find reviews of other books that have been sent in by readers on our Bay Tales website. And you indeed can provide your own review. Send us a review to baytales20@gmail.com and we'll post up as many as we can. And one featured reviewer each month will receive one of our favourite books released that month. Back to you, Vic.
Right. I will just go back to the Chris MacGeorge book because I've got an amusing little story. I ended up with Rob Scragg's dedicated copy at Harrogate this week, and I said I'd pass it on. So I had it at the front door waiting to go, and my dad visited and tried to steal it. He just kind of picked it up and said to my mum, "Oh, this is for us," and walked out of the house. And I was like, "It's actually not. You'll see that it's actually signed to Rob." So Rob Scragg does now have his copy of the book, but I now have to get a copy for my dad. So there you go. It sounds great, Chris. Now to our guest reviewer, who this month is James Routledge. He is an award-winning bookseller and manager of Whitley Bay's newest independent bookshop, The Bound. From contemporary art to natural history, James is a reader of all genres. Tonight, he's here to talk about not even drinking tonight, maybe a Harrogate hangover, not sure. Tonight, James is here to talk about Anthony Horowitz's latest novel, A Line to Kill. Hello, James.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you, Vic and Simon, for having me. Right, let me start by setting the scene a little, and we'll go from the beginning. So, in the footsteps of Stephen King, Philip Roth, even Kurt Vonnegut, we face an author's interesting, but at times questionable choice of recreating themselves in fiction. And here we have Hawthorne and Horowitz. At the risk of being somewhat self-indulgent, we follow Anthony Horowitz as real-life best-selling author turned true crime chronicler as he breaks the literary fourth wall and joins fictional former detective and now private investigator Daniel Hawthorne. Assisting the police in their investigations, in books 1 and 2, we see our intrepid duo tackle clever and compulsive murder cases that test their partially predictable but mostly forgivable working relationship. As the series progresses, we see Horowitz very much playing the successful working author Watson to Hawthorne's pretty straight-edge Sherlock Holmes. And that brings us to the third in the series, A Line to Kill. A modern twist on a classic whodunit set on the small island of Alderney. It's got everything a good mystery needs. The historic island location, small isolated community, an ultra-modern designer house come crime scene, brilliantly eccentric characters from popular children's author and performance poet to a blind stage psychic and celebrity TV chef. All this set against the backdrop of the inaugural Alderney Literary Festival, with added shady characters, public planning feud that has split the community, and, of course, a murder. For those crime fans who may have returned from Harrogate Festival this week, you'll have appreciated the finer details of the book world in person, that of book signings, interviews, industry receptions, something most of us have not enjoyed for a little while now. But from there, we're plunged in classic vintage crime style into the first murder investigation the island has ever seen. And it's every festival organizer's worst nightmare. With no police presence on the island, Hawthorne and Horowitz are called in to get the investigation underway until the professionals arrive. Now, with new celebrity status, the locals are a little more welcoming, but in typical small town mentality, they're faced with secrets, backstabbing, and lies. Meanwhile, with a fresh corpse in the gunnery and the locals on edge, the island is in lockdown. Everyone is kept from leaving, including the murderer. Now, as someone from the Alex Rider generation of readers, I've grown up with Horowitz stories. Whether it's Midsummer Murders, Foyle's War, or now Bond, Horowitz prose is light yet compelling, full of keen observations, attention to detail, a playful and well-crafted plot, and just the right balance of red herrings to keep you guessing the entire way through. But with all the typical nods to a serious and sophisticated whodunit, A Line to Kill remains joyfully aware of itself. With the occasional reference to his own novels and TV, our narrator clearly doesn't take himself too seriously. Anthony's wit and at times naive commentary guides us through the story, and we're with him every step of the way as he attempts to piece together the mystery alongside the readers, or perhaps a step or two behind. Although deniably a sequel to his previous two, this book can easily be read as a standalone. And if you're new to the series or even to Horowitz writing, there's enough background and context for you to hit the ground running. With 380 pages of forks in the road, dead ends, suspicion, conspiracy, blackmail, A Line to Kill harks back to some of those classic mystery tropes, whilst just avoiding full-blown cliche. Written more as a love letter to the golden age of crime, this is Midsummer Murders meets Castle on a Channel Island staycation. It may not quite accomplish for Alderney what Anne Cleeves has done for Shetland, but it's the perfect pacey page turner for the summer, a very well-crafted and thoroughly enjoyable read. The book is officially out on the 19th of next month. It's also available to pre-order from our shop, The Bound, or the Forum Books website as well. That's it. Thank you very much.
And I just want to clarify, James, for our viewers who aren't in the Northeast, you do post books out, don't you, if they would like to order through you?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, we post all over the world. We've got a ton of pre-orders, obviously, on the website, and pretty much anything you can think of, we can get as well.
Perfect. And what's the website, please?
Well, our website, because we're connected to Forum Books, is dead easy. It's forumbookshop.com. Excellent.
Thank you so much, and thanks for that brilliant review.
Thank you.
I'll no doubt see you in the shop very soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Thank you. Okay, so it's now time for our first guest reader of the night. Yes, I said first because we've got two tonight. I'm so excited about this that I just can't even tell you. So, Joanne Harris is an Anglo-French author whose books include 14 novels, 2 cookbooks, and many short stories. Her work is extremely diverse, covering aspects of magic realism, suspense, historical fiction, mythology, and fantasy. Many of you will know that in 2000, her 1999 novel Chocolat was adapted to the screen, starring Juliette Binoche and Johnny Depp. Joanne is an honorary fellow of St Catherine's College, Cambridge, and in 2013 was awarded an MBE by the Queen. So it is my huge pleasure to be introducing to you Joanne Harris.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for hosting.
And thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to hear your reading.
Well, I'm going to be reading from my new book, Narrow Door, which is coming out next week on August the 4th. And it's set in St Oswald's Grammar School, which I've written about before. And it's written in 2 voices. One is the voice of the Latin master, Mr. Straightley, who we've met before, and the second is the voice of Rebecca Buckfast, the new headmistress. And it's really her story. And we go back into her past. And I'm going to read something about her arrival at her very first job, which is quite close to my heart because for 15 years before I was a full-time writer, I also taught in a boys' grammar school and had some of the same adventures as this woman, though fortunately I was neither as murderous nor as damaged as Rebecca. This is her arriving at her new job and having quite a lot of problems there. The departmental common room was on the middle corridor, where the languages department had its rooms. It was a smallish office room with 4 desks, 2 armchairs, a phone on the wall, and in the corner an item that I took to be the bander machine. It was a primitive thing, comprised of a kind of metal barrel turned by a metal handle, with a tray holding blank paper. A kind of grill served to protect the paper from the mechanism. In the sunlight, it seemed to snarl like the grill of an approaching car. "These are your masters," Scoons had said. I understood that the inky sheets were supposed to be fixed onto the barrel somehow, where the print from the master would be transferred onto the blank sheet of paper. I selected a worksheet marked 4 lower and fixed the master sheet into place. I turned the handle experimentally. The printed sheet shot out from beneath the barrel and landed face up on the floor. The print, which was smudgy and rather faint, came out in the same bilious purple. I tried another sheet, which crumpled and jammed under the rim of the barrel. I smoothed out the master and tried again, smelling that characteristic scent of ink and metal and solvent. The handle turned, the barrel clanked. It sounded like a clockwork toy. Printed pages shot out one by one, landing pell-mell on the floor. I bent down to gather them and found my hands stained purple with ink. "Fuck," I said, at the moment at which the door opened, revealing a grey-haired man in a doctoral robe and wearing an expression of distinct disapproval. He made no comment at my outburst, but my face lit up like a flare. "You must be Miss Price," he said. I made a meaningless little sound and gathered the rest of my papers. "I'm Dr. Sinclair, head of French. Scoons should have brought you up to date, copy of the book and so forth." He looked down at my inky hands. "I see you've worked out the bander machine." I nodded again. "Yes, thanks." "Good." He eyed me coolly. "I'm afraid there are no bathroom facilities for ladies at King Henry's. You'll need to ask the school secretary for the key to the disabled toilet." "I'm sure that will be fine," I said. "One more thing." He looked me up and down. "Ladies at King Henry's do not as a rule wear trousers. We have a formal dress code here. Business suits for the gentlemen, a skirt suit or frock for the ladies." "Oh," I said, rather taken aback. The trouser suit had cost rather more than I usually spent on work clothes. I'd assumed it would count as business wear. I wanted to protest, but there was something about Sinclair that was intimidating, in spite of his quiet demeanour. Perhaps it was the gown he wore, or his effortless air of authority. He had been a teacher at King Henry's for over 30 years. He was practically part of the building. I tried to imagine how it would feel to have that kind of confidence. Instead, I could feel a lump in my throat, an alarming stinging in my eyes. Sinclair went on without seeming to notice my expression. "Any trouble with the boys, just tell Scoons. He'll sort it out. Good chap, Scoons. Knows what he's doing. He'll talk you through detention procedure and so forth." "I won't have any trouble," I said. His look was politely incredulous. I suppose in his world, a woman teacher, especially such a young one, was inevitably going to have trouble with the boys. "Well, if you do talk to Scoons," he said, and left in a swirl of scarlet-tipped robes. I rearranged the crumpled sheets with hands that trembled a little. "I don't belong here," I told myself. What on earth possessed me to think that I could ever teach here? "It's only for 3 months, I thought. 3 months and you can breathe again. 3 months and you'll have the whole of the summer holidays to do what? Prepare? Escape?" I found the boys lined up quietly on the left-hand side of the door. A little too quietly, I thought. The quietness of teenagers is usually linked with uncertainty. As soon as they felt secure again, the disruption would begin. The trick has always been to identify the troublemakers and defuse any misbehaviour before it becomes disruptive. I followed the boys into the class. I counted 31 of them. The black folder gave me their names. The class was a smallish, L-shaped room with a bank of windows facing east. Golden sunlight filtered through, picking motes out of the air. The teacher's desk was on a kind of stage, overlooking the classroom. Over the door hung the classroom bell and an old-fashioned box calendar. I noticed a blonde boy wearing a prefect's badge choose a desk on the far end of the back row and marked him for attention. The back row is traditionally the troublemaker's domain, and this boy had an impudent look, a slightly clownish walk, a grin that suggested some inner hilarity that told me he might be the one to lead the class into mayhem. The boys stayed standing as I came in. Another King Henry's tradition. I said, "Please sit down. My name is Miss Price. I'll be taking over your class." The blonde boy in the back row said, "Asda Price." A murmur spread among the boys. I knew it. That blonde boy was trouble. His hair in the morning sunlight was almost dazzlingly bright. I tried to see his face, but the sun had bleached his features of detail. He looked like the shadow of a boy reflected in a sheet of foil. "Are you new, miss?" one boy said, "or are you just another supply?" Another said, "What car do you drive?" "A Mini," said the third, and grinned. I said, "I'll need to learn your names. Please write yours on a sheet and put it on the front of your desk." I handed out sheets of paper. The boys took the opportunity to start talking among themselves. I felt my cheeks begin to burn. Even at such an early time, the classroom was already warm. "No talking, please," I said. The noise subsided a little. Only the blonde boy at the back seemed not to have heard me. Instead, he grinned and started to fold his sheet of paper into the shape of an aeroplane. "We'll have none of that," I said. The boy's grin widened still further. Around him, the other boys had begun to talk among themselves again. Several were drawing on their name sheets. In a moment, they would be riotous. "You at the back, what's your name?" I said in a crisp tone, addressing the blonde boy. The boy in front of him looked up. "Persimmon, miss." "Not you," I said. Persimmon feigned confusion. He had a broad, comic face and a habit of sprawling across his desk like a lazy seal on a flat rock. Behind him, the blonde boy met my gaze, unabashed, grinning triumphantly. "All right, we'll try this again," I said, trying to sound confident. "Everyone stand in silence." The boys stood up rather noisily, grinning at one another. "Asda Price," repeated Persimmon, tapping his trouser pocket like the woman in the advert. "What did you say?" "Yes, Miss Price," said Persimmon, innocently, tapping his back pocket again. The boys on either side of him grinned. The boy on the back row capered and danced like the conductor of a mad orchestra. "Yes, Miss Price," said the rest of the class, all tapping their pockets in unison. A ripple of laughter went through the group, a ripple that soon became a wave. At the back, the blonde-haired boy was in paroxysms of laughter, lolling half in, half out of his chair. There was something strangely familiar in the way he moved, I thought. The sun was too bright for me to see his features properly, and yet there was something in his smile that I found deeply unsettling. "You at the back, stop that, sit down." My voice was sharper than I'd thought. I was almost close to tears. The class fell suddenly silent, but not at my words. The glazed classroom door had opened, and I saw Mr. Scoons in the doorway. "What in hell's name is going on?" trumpeted Scoons in his locker room voice. The boys had stood up at his entrance and now remained in silence, wooden as toy soldiers. Scoons went on, "I could hear you all the way to my office." The boys stood there in silence, heads bent as if it made them invisible. I said to Scoons, "I'll handle this, thanks." Scoons ignored me completely. Any more noise from this class, he said, and you'll all be staying in at break. Is that understood? Yes, sir. I didn't hear you, said Scoones. Yes, sir. You'd better, said Scoones, and left once more, without having said a word to me, or even acknowledged my presence. For a moment I stood there in silence, feeling my embarrassment turn to rage. The boys were still standing, awaiting my reaction in silence. Oh, sit down, for pity's sake, I said. Then, shifting my gaze to the sunlit back row, I looked for the troublemaker. And in that moment I realized two things. One, the reason the boy in the back row had looked so very familiar was that he was the very image of my brother at 14. Two, in the moment between my outburst and Eric's intervention, the blonde-haired boy in the back row had somehow completely disappeared.
Thank you so much for that, Joanne. It does take me back to when I was a teacher, and not in a nice way, but it was wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it's time for a very short break now. If you would like to help us stay afloat, it's a bay poem. I'm going to put the Ko-Fi link in the chat. Obviously, there is no obligation for you to do so, but if you would like to swing a few pennies our way, that would be super. Keep watching the break for information on how to read a free book, how to win a free book. Only pick one. We're going to do our best Joanne Harris school mom impersonation. You will be disqualified if you enter for more than one book, okay? We will be back in a couple of minutes with Olivia Kiernan and James Delargy.
Got time.